to the Catholic Mom Book Club. I am Allison Gingras, and I am the author of this this season's book club. And yes, I am reading it, Encountering Signs of Faith, my unexpected journey with the sacramentals, the saints, and the abundant grace of God. If you didn't know this about authors, we don't pick our titles, so I'm still learning it. I do love it, though. I think they did a beautiful job in naming it. This is out now from Ave Maria Press. I am joined today, easy for me to say, not, by two amazing Catholic mom contributors, Maria Gallagher and Yvonne Hernandez. Thank you both so much for joining me. I kind of was really excited that you both worked out to be on this date because today we're talking about chapter 5 and chapter 6, and that's the brown scapula, but also in the Sacred Heart devotion. But most importantly for our conversation today is the Rosary, one of my absolute favorite topics in all the world. And I know that you both share that sweet devotion. So thank you both for joining us. Maria, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe how you became a Catholic Mom contributor?
Sure. I guess that my story begins in Columbus, Ohio, where I was born and raised. And I always had a fascination with words. And so I grew up to become a journalist. And I worked in journalism for quite some time. But then I felt a calling to the pro life movement. And so I became a full time pro life advocate for pregnant women, their babies, people with disabilities, the frail elderly. And it was while I was working my full time job that I became aware of CatholicMom.com. And I thought, you know what, this is a fascinating organization. I think I want to learn more. And so I contacted the editor and I told her about myself and about my background in writing. And I was so honored when she told me that I would become a contributor to CatholicMom.com. And I still consider it to be a distinct honor and to be among people like the two of you. I mean, it's just a thrill for me. And I have such admiration for the founder of CatholicMom.com and for all those who are contributing now. I think this is a wonderful community, and I am so blessed to be part of it.
I love that you used the word community because we definitely look at Catholic Mom as a community. And that wonderful founder is Lisa Hendy, and she happens to be joining us today in the com box. So thank you so much, Lisa, for hanging out with us today. We're always so thrilled to have you. And I have to share we before Yvonne shares a little bit about herself, is that Lisa's not aware of this story, but yet this is just an affirmation from heaven that Father Peyton, who is he's like the head of my Saint posse. Let me just be honest. I live just 20 minutes from where he's buried. I've been praying at his gravesite for nearly 20 years now. He has just really guided my life in ways that are just remarkable and truly heavenly and mystical. But the funny thing that Lisa doesn't know, we'll talk about Father Peyton a little bit more later, is that Yvonne was having a lot of trouble with her technology. And while she was rebooting, I grabbed my holy card, I did a little dance with it, and I said, Father Peyton, you need to help us because I know Yvonne shares this special devotion to this beautiful priest. And when she came back, boom, no more technology problems. We love you, Father Peyton. So you are so right, Lisa. I have goosebumps and at least smiling today. And I put him to work because he'd like that. So Yvonne Hernandez, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you became a Catholic Mom contributor.
I will first thank you for having me here today. It's just such a joy to be with you all. And so I was born and raised in Puerto Rico, born in a Catholic family, Catholic school. But I guess the very common story of just kind of going a different way through life and eventually finding my way back. And one of the things I've loved reading your book is how I can relate to the fact of these little devotions just showing up in your life at the right time to help you take the next step. Sometimes it's a leap, sometimes it's a little tiny step. And a few years ago, not too long after actually doing the enthronement of our family to the Sacred Heart, which is just interesting how these two chapters are like one next to the other, because that led me to this writing path in a way. From there, my son and I we felt called to join the Lay Associates of the Blessed Sacrament, which is congregation founded by St. Peter Julian Amard. And from that, I started working with a friend and helping her write a consecration to Jesus through Our Lady of the Blessed Sacrament, which is a very short title for Mary, which we celebrate on May 13th, many years before Fatima. So from then, I just felt inspired to start writing these some reflections on the Rosary, which ended up being a book I published. And that came after a miracle healing I had through the intercession of Father Peyton, when I was starting to just explore the Rosary a little bit more. So, it's just this beautiful story about one step and the other and the other. And Father Peyton was there the whole time, because when I read his story and I heard that he had been healed, at the time I was bedbound for 5 months, and I took a leap of faith and asked for healing and an audit, and it was just amazing. So from then, writing a book on meditating on the Rosary from the point of view of the Eucharist, to then, after kind of writing, I discovered Catholic Mom, and I just one day felt, hey, let me see if they want me, and they did. So this has been just such a joy to write monthly and to really get to know all the other writers, and then get to know Allison, and just discover how much we have in common. Father Peyton keeps just putting things, together. And so just being here today is just like one more step in that journey. So just very, very blessed.
We're gonna subtitle this episode the Godsidence episode, because look who sits, and if you can see who sits on my desk, she's a little dusty. I just realized as I pulled her down, but this is Our Lady of the Blessed Sacrament, and isn't she gorgeous? So in the book Encountering Signs of Faith, I talk about statues and how they help us to grow. It's just this beautiful reminder that that she brought us, so I'm going to try to put it backwards, not so much dust, just that she brought to the world Jesus, and that's very Jesus, the totality, the body, blood, soul, and devotion, soul and divinity of that baby that she brought into the world is the same exact person that we receive in the Eucharist. So I absolutely love that kind of tie. I think sometimes it really helps, at least it helps me, to not to fall into thinking of the Eucharist as a symbol or just a reminder of who Jesus is, but it's not a what, it's a who. It is actually Jesus. But I digress to the Eucharist. Let's come back to the devotions. So let's start. And Yvonne, I'm going to start with you, because you just talked about how your family not just, but you enthroned, and now you just wrote about it. It was the just in my head. I know you just wrote about this beautiful enthronement. So you could tell us a little bit about the enthronement, which I talk about in Encountering Signs of Faith, which I have yet to do. I know that's pathetic. And one of my dearest friends is Emily Geminette, who has her whole ministry, right? And beautiful, yes. And I'll get it when we talk about. So talk about your enthronement, and I'll find the words I'm looking for.
Well, as you are speaking about it, I realized that one thing that a lot of the devotions that have come in my life have in common is that they come first. I do it not really knowing fully what I'm doing and very imperfectly, and then it kind of like the gift reveals itself to me over time, and then I look back, I'm like, oh, this is the fruit of that, and it is, that's the way enthronement happened too, because I've had a connection to the devotion of Sacred Heart always because the church where I did my first communion was Sacred Heart.
Oh, wow.
And so that was
That's a
the
coincidence.
Catholic elementary school I went to in Puerto Rico was, Sacred Heart of Jesus. So, and at the time, my family didn't go to Mass on Sundays. So I just had the blessing that every Tuesday, the school would go to Mass. I wasn't receiving on Sunday, but I was, after my first communion, I was receiving communion weekly. And then when I got married, that's the one parish I had a connection to. So we got married there, So it's always been, and through the years when I hear Sacred Heart, there's just this connection. I really didn't know about St. Margaret Mary or all the promises or anything like that. It just kind of came like that. And a few years back, this community, I was part of a Catholic homeschool community, and we had been doing consecration to Jesus through Mary as a group for a number of years. And this one particular year, on the weekend of the Feast of, Sacred Heart falls on Friday, the Feast of the Immaculate Heart is the next Saturday. They're kind of always together. So that year, on that Saturday, my friend Laura Ward had organized for our group this enthronement thing that I had no clue what it was. So, she had brought us the consecration like 10 years, and then she brought that. We read the information, and we're like, yes, this sounds like a good thing, So we went and participated and put a little, statue of the Sacred Heart in our home, and just did the things and felt like, well, that's really nice. And then as the years went by and all these other things, started happening, I'm a really big watcher of dates as signs, but it's always in hindsight. Not trying, it's not
Right.
like, because you also mentioned that in the book, like you can be looking too much and going crazy. So it's usually in hindsight. And then when I go and connect the dots, I'm like, all this started from that enthronement. And then I start reading the promises. I'm like, yes, we have grown closer. Yes, there's more peace. So, and then I look at all the things that I'm still hoping for, and I go like, okay, those will happen too,
That's beautiful. So I want to invite people to welcomehisheart.com. Emily Jeminet is another Catholic mom contributor. Family has this beautiful Sacred Heart enthronement ministry, Welcome His Heart. And there's so many different resources there and the promises that Yvonne was just talking about. But in the interest of time, we're going to kind of move to a little bit further into the other devotions. Maria, do you have a favorite devotion that you participate in or really has changed your life like Yvonne's has?
My devotion, my favorite devotion, my all-time favorite is the Most Holy Rosary. And this is actually my favorite rosary. I don't know if you can see, it's multicolored, and it's multicolored for several reasons that are important to me. One is that this is the rosary that was inspired by Archbishop Fulton Sheen, and it's a rosary for the whole world, and each decade represents a different continent. And so that's very special to me. But also, I'm a member of the worldwide Curcio movement, which is a lay movement of the Catholic Church to bring people closer to Jesus and to his love. And in the Curcio movement, we say that if you are full of grace, then you are of many colors. And so this rosary reminds me so much of the Curcio movement and how it's brought me closer to Jesus and closer to other people. And my devotion to the rosary goes way, way back. My mom just seemed to have a rosary in her hands continuously when I was a child, probably because she had me as a daughter.
You're so funny.
Yeah, other factors as well.
I find it just 1 minute for a second there, Miss Maria. I find it kind of hard that you were a problem child, but go on with your story.
My personality is rebel. And so that's what she faced as I was growing up. So she really needed that rosary. And she taught it to me. And when I was very little, my father had a lot of financial problems and a lot of problems at work. And I would literally pray the rosary every week that he would make the payroll for his company. And sure enough, every week he did make the payroll and we were able to eat. And so I learned from a very early age that God was really my provider, that my father was helping, but that ultimately it was God that provided for us. And the rosary has led me through so many things. With the pro-life movement, it's essential. Praying for those pregnant women and their babies each and every day. The rosary has helped me in my journey as a mother, and I taught it to my daughter. And I remember when she was very little, and we would dedicate each decade to a different member of our extended family. And I can still hear her little voice in my head saying, "This one's for Aunt Rose." And, it was very special to us, that time together praying the rosary. And I know some people face challenges in their families praying the rosary together. I can certainly understand that. If you can at least do a decade each day, I think it helps tremendously. And it brings you closer to Mary, and Mary always brings you closer to Jesus.
I love that. I love John Paul II called it the School of Mary. In the book Encountering Signs of Faith, I share the story of my childhood and my experience with the rosary. And the story is, I remember, it's how I remember it, that my mother was petrified of thunder and lightning storms, like petrified. And luckily we live in the Northeast. We didn't have too many of them, but when we get them, they are doozies. And so she would line us up on the couch, me and my brother and my sister. Well, first we'd unplug everything in the house. Do you remember being able to unplug everything in your house and not completely mess up every clock you own? So we would unplug everything. She'd line us up. She'd hand us these plastic rosary beads, and we would pray Hail Mary, Our Fathers and Hail Marys until the storm went by. We didn't pray about the mystery. So the idea of Mary, the rosaries being School of Mary, was not in my vocabulary because I didn't realize that the mysteries would teach us about the life of Jesus that would help us to grow in our faith. But I didn't have that. We would just do Our Fathers and Hail Marys. And then one day, true story, my house was struck by lightning. Oh. And I was like, oh, prayer doesn't work. These rosary beads are broken. Hindsight, I love how you're saying, like, Yvonne, you're saying, I don't see it now. It's in hindsight. Nothing happened bad to my house. Like, my house did not burn down to the ground. Nobody was hurt. It was back when you had the Rodigan antennas on your TV. Which is what it struck, by the way. It, just blew off the cover. We had some burnt charness down the side of our house, but the prayer did actually protect us. But I did not see it that way. And I also didn't see how much it could teach me, and what a beautiful devotion it was. Not just just wrote prayers that we want to get out of the way because we're told we have to pray, but that this is a great way of meditating, of growing closer in our faith. And if you probably saw me with my head back to you, and I apologize, I have both of your beautiful books, which were both have something to do with the rosary, right? And I am remiss that I thought I put them right here, but I did not. They're probably hiding under some dust bunnies. So Yvonne, tell us about your devotion to the rosary, and you can actually share a little bit about your book as well.
Sure. So interesting. I didn't grow up praying the rosary, or it wasn't in my house, except I do have a memory of, say, my grandfather, who he was in Puerto Rico, but he was born in St. Kitts. So British English was his first language. And so he spoke Spanish very funnily. And I don't know why I was with him at church one day, but we were sitting in the back, and he was just, moving these rosary beads in his hands. And I asked him why, what was he doing? He said, well, he can't understand really what they were saying because it was a priest from Spain with his own accent. So he would pray the rosary, and it's just kind of a memory. And I would see him praying, by his bed, kneeling sometimes when I slept over. But that was it. I had just kind of like actually a negative connotation to the rosary, like it was a long thing and boring, and people just did it at funerals, and it was just kind of didn't appeal to me. But many years later, when my grandfather died, and I went to his funeral, I was already a mom. He had this rosary in his hands in the casket. Well, actually, the bottom part keeps falling. It's probably in the purse, and the metal part has nothing because it fell off, and it's really, oh, I'm gone.
No, you're
Oh,
there. I'm
there I
sorry.
am.
I should have warned you. I can make you just you because I wanted them to
Oh.
see the rosary. So I'm going to do it one more time. I didn't mean to panic you. So you can show that. Here you go.
All right. So yeah. So as you can see, there's no metal. Whoops. There. And the cross is somewhere probably in the purse. But he was holding that in the in the casket, and it just something inside me said, take it. Oh, look, here's the other part. Look at this. The corpus is like worn out and broken.
Wow.
But I love it, and I don't want to fix it. I mean, I'll join it again together, but it's used, it's prayed with, it's loved. It's like it was his prayers, and probably some of those were for me, right? And I saw it there in the casket, and just something came over me, and I grabbed it. So I really think he wanted me to have it, because many years later, when I discovered Father Peyton and these rosary rallies he did, this memory of my rosary came like out of nowhere. And I went and looked for it and found it immediately. So it was really, it's just like, I love how God puts things in life. You're not ready to really understand it all or move into there, but it's there. And I found that to be true about praying the rosary. I've come to understand that you can pray the rosary just by holding it. You can pray a decade. You can pray the whole thing. You can have the deepest meditation in the mystery. They're all praying the rosary, and a little 3-year-old holding and chewing on a bead. I truly believe that counts for them. When hopefully would go one day in heaven, Our Lady said, look, these are all the rosaries you prayed, and this is all the grace that came to you and your ones for that. So it's been really a relationship of doing it and experiencing and learning. And when I did after, I spent 5 months in bed, and I have a neuromuscular condition that's progressive, and I still have it. But this was back in 2014. Towards the end of those 5 months, I had been asked to do a presentation of the rosary we were part of a Teams of Our Lady at the time, and I didn't really pray it. I really didn't do it. So I was like felt very inadequate. So I decided, well, I needed to do research. I had been wanting to pray the rosary daily for a long time. And in those few months that I was sick, I had been able to go to daily mass. I had an app. So I prayed the rosary every day in the app on the way there and back. So for the first time in my life, I was praying the rosary daily, even though at the time I didn't count it because I was just playing an app and I was driving, and I didn't think it counted as much. And then I need to do this presentation. So I started researching, discover Father Peyton. I watched these videos of these rallies he had with millions of people. I'm like, I just felt this zeal come over me. And I heard the story about how he was healed. And I said, well, Mom, if you heal me, I'll do a marathon for you. I'll do this. And then like immediately I go like, oh, well, you don't have to heal me. I'll do whatever you want. Like I took it back, like what are you thinking? But I went on and I did the presentation, and 2 days later, I'm walking around my house and cleaning when I came back
That's
from daily mass.
incredible, Yvonne. That is so incredible.
It was amazing, and
The rosary is just such a blessing in so many ways. I know, Maria, you took an interesting take and when you share the rosary, and you shared in your book just about the joyfulness of it. Now, I'm a woman who like really struggles with anxiety. And one of the reasons I fell so in love with the devotions of our church is because so many of them came with promises. I like me a good promise from God, who cannot break his promises, right? He does
Right.
not say things he does not mean. And I really loved how some of the promises, the promise to not be abandoned in my death, the promise for the graces I need for whatever I encounter. And I think it's the graces that help us to be joyful people, because happiness and joy are not the same. And I know I, for most of my life, confused the two in my brain. Like, we think of happiness as I have to do this, I have to do that, I have to have like all of the things the world has to give me. But those are all fleeting. Things break, jobs end, money runs out. Like these things don't last forever. But joy is this understanding that God is with me forever, and what waits for me beyond here is something I could never imagine. And that is what gives me joy. So tell me, Maria, why did you focus your book on the joyful mysteries?
I think it was because I was drawn to them. It was during the height of the pandemic. I couldn't go anywhere. I had worn my welcome out at the local grocery store, which was about the only place I could go. And so I couldn't go to the church. I couldn't go anywhere. And so I thought, this would be a good time to write. And I would like to bring joy to other people. This is a very difficult time in the lives of many people. And I think that when you pray the joyful mysteries of the rosary, you can draw closer to Mary, and that relationship can bring you a whole lot of joy. And by joy, I mean peace of soul and peace of heart. And that's what we're all longing for.
I love that. I'm just sharing the links here. Of course, there also will be in the show notes, and they will be in the comments if you're watching this video either on YouTube or on Catholic Mom Facebook page. I love that we can branch out and reach all these different places doing this book club, bringing people closer to Christ by understanding that he's so tangible, that he's so visible, and that he's not a hidden God. And that's what Encountering Signs of Faith is all about. But also part of my journey was that I wanted to share the legacy of faith that I'm hoping to leave for my family. We're all adopted children. My story is about my actual adoption of my daughter, Faith, who's profoundly deaf and from China. And it was understanding that it's not just her adoption, that we're all adopted into the family of God. And then with that adoption comes heirlooms and a legacy of faith. So I guess that's what I'm trying to say. So I would love to know from both of you what you hope your legacy of faith will be. And Maria, I'm going to start with you this time. What legacy of faith do you hope to leave with your family or in the world?
I think that the legacy of hope and faith that I would be very grateful to leave is one of perennial trust and surrender to God. I've had a number of struggles in my life. I've had a number of hardships. And it was only through that trust in God that I was able to survive and to share that faith with my daughter and with the rest of my family. And so through my book, which is Joyful Encounters with Mary, I hope to leave that legacy of faith to other people. And it's been a joy really to touch base with other writers such as you, Allison, and you, Yvonne, and to see what legacies you're sharing with the world. And I think we're all enriched by them.
And bringing up being writers, and what I really love about the Catholic Mom community is that I started writing in 2012. I was not a professional writer. I still don't consider myself a professional writer, though I do it for a living. But I was just so thrilled, as you both have said, like so honored to be included and allowed to share my faith. And I think that's one of the things the internet has been such a blessing for, is that we all have something to share. And God has put that message only in us. No one else has your faith. No one else has your message. And to feel that empowerment to share it through the internet, through social media, through beautiful sites like CatholicMom.com, to be able to take what God has given you in private and to share it with others so that they might discover the real, tangible, incredible God that we have. It's been such an honor. And Yvonne, how about you? What kind of legacy of faith do you hope to leave?
Well, before I answer your question, I do want to say something about your book because I'm really enjoying reading it. And
Thank you.
for the last 3 years, I've worked with the RCIA ministry in our parish, and I just keep thinking what a great gift this would be to a freshly new Catholic that can see all, so many call me like they're overwhelmed about all these, and things, and what do they do, and I love how you present them, how they came into your life, the information, the saint. It's like, it's really concise yet full at the same time. It really has everything I think somebody would need. And I also love, I was reading the story about when you first were trying to bond with Faithy and in the bathtub and all that. And my heart, I had already connected, oh, that's how God is with us, trying to connect. And then you spelled it out. And it really gave me a new way to see myself as an adopted child of God through the eyes of an adoptive mother. So thank you for that. And I really, I was looking forward to it, and I've been just getting so much.
Thank you so much. So, fun fact, the adult confirmation program that I'm part of in my diocese, this is what we gave. I was so honored that they would choose to, because of just what you're saying. We enter the faith and we try to grow in the faith, and it can be very overwhelming. Like, I have been a Catholic for well over 50 years, and I am just learning what the Catholic Church has to offer, the beautiful traditions and devotions and what they mean, and how we can use them to grow closer to God, and how we can use them. For me, I use them to overcome anxiety and worry. And I'm so thank you so much for saying that. And if anybody's looking for a good gift for your newly confirmed and or baptized at Easter time, let me recommend Encountering Signs of Faith. Okay, but how about your a little commercial interruption?
So I have shared, talking with my husband, who we're both writers now, and we write weekly. We have a blog, EliciaBahouse.com, and some of those it's the ones I share on Catholic once a month. Just knowing that all I'm writing about myself and my journey of faith and my love for God is there for hopefully my children or grandchildren, whoever, comes eventually. Because I just keep thinking, if I had, because you asked me about my book before, so anyway, this is my book, The Rosary Eucharistic Meditations with St. Peter Julian Eymard. And when I wrote it, it was so scary to share because it felt like I was sharing my journey. When you're sharing the stories and the things God kind of gives you in your heart. And then I'm thinking, if I had my grandmother's journal,
right,
or my great-grandmother's journal, faith, like what a gift that would be. So I just feel so grateful that the book and the blogs that are there and the Catholic Mom and things are on the internet forever. I don't know when and how, but it's hopefully the life and the memories and the people I'm loving. But then there's also that record of my thoughts, things you don't necessarily get to talk to with your people every day. So
I love that the idea of journaling, because not everybody's going to write a book. Not everybody has to write a book. Not everybody even has to publish their thoughts on social media, or even though people do think they have to publish every thought and every meal on social media, it's really not necessary. But the idea of writing them down, I know there's many different books where you can journal your thoughts, your own memories, like a little create a keepsake, right, for your family in your passing. I think that's a great idea to keep in mind. Unfortunately, ladies, I could talk to you all day, but we have come to the end of our time together. That went by way too fast. Maria Gallagher, Yvonne Hernandez, thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you so much for being such a beautiful, important part of the Catholic Mom community.
Thank you. Thank you for writing your wonderful book. Everybody should get a copy now.
Definitely. Thank you.
You're welcome. Link in the bio. Anyway, we'll be back again next week at Tuesday at noon Eastern time to discuss a little bit more about encountering signs of faith. And what I love about this, and I hope that if you're considering starting your own book club, you will see what happens when you start talking about books. It's not about the material. That's what you read at home oftentimes. It's about the beautiful discussions you can have. It's how you can share your faith and your heart with other women and grow into faith together. Books are just kind of the vehicle that gets you to the destination. So thank you so much for spending time with us. Continue the conversation over at Catholic Mom. Yes, try that again, Allison. At Catholic Mom Community on Facebook. We really look forward to hearing from you and what your legacy of faith is. God bless, and we'll see you next Tuesday.